with the bombing of Syria, with the renewed embrace of NATO, with the alienation from Putin, and with clear indications that he's willing to trade all of his populism on trade, on global trade, particularly with China, for cooperation, that he has been disciplined by capital. In the next few years, we're going to basically see a mainstream right-wing neoliberal regime that will increasingly be supported by the mainstream of the Democrats in Washington and the mainstream of the Republicans in DC. I'm very, very doubtful that that any segment of capital, wants significant and long-term import taxes, tariffs, and that he's going to get that through Congress. I would say that racism is one of the sort of themes, along with economic nationalism, xenophobia generally, that bound together the Trump coalition, which was predominantly drawn from the middle classes. This sort of racism has an appeal because people don't see any anti-capitalist class against class alternative. They look around them for the last 40 or 50 years in this country, and they don't see very effective working class organizations that can, in fact, defend the living conditions of working class people and of lower middle class people against capital effectively. Which means that in terms of rebuilding a movement that's going to target capital, or the 1%, the question of race and immigration, et cetera, is going to be an important part of our organizing. That the need for solidarity amongst all working people, including the defense of the rights of immigrants, particularly the undocumented, is going to be part and parcel of the politics of any revived movement in this country. I think that we're seeing, and we'll get to this later, a birth of a new left, which, like the birth of the new left in the 1960s in this country, is taking place within the confines of a social democratic organization. The problem is that many of these people, particularly the older ones, but even some of the younger ones, still believe that the main road to power is through electoral politics. Some of them still believe that you can somehow use the Democratic Party to build a political movement in opposition to Trump and Trumpism. I would characterize the growth of DSA slightly differently. I do not see this as the growth of a social democratic left. Mm-hmm. I see this as a much more inchoate layer of people that are very much in flux politically, very much like the young people who flowed towards SDS particularly from 1964, 65, 66 onward. I think that the vast majority of the people who are joining DSA today don't have hardened positions on the Democratic Party, don't have hardened positions on electoral politics, don't have hardened positions on the labor officials, or on how to do organizing, etc. Most of them are absolutely disgusted with the mainstream of American liberalism and are, I think, open to more radical ideas. A basically non-sectarian approach by the revolutionary left to DSA and to all the young people who are joining it for unity in action wherever possible, and for serious discussion and debate about the hard issues facing the socialist left is the way to go. The dominant politics in the US left, both social democratic and what's left of Maoism, etc., doesn't see the problem in the unions as a sociological problem of a struggle between a bureaucracy and an active rank and file. They tend to see the problem as conservative leaders versus progressive leaders. The Russian Revolution remains the only workers' revolution that succeeded in taking and holding power for a period of time. It showed the world that working people, through their own organizations and own struggles, could in fact not only overthrow the old regime in Russia, but could build an alternative, a more radically democratic alternative that the world has ever seen. A government based on councils and workplaces and communities, etc. That it attempted to saw that this could not go, for it to succeed, it could not be limited to one country. Now, I think the road to a revolutionary party today is going to be very long, very twisted, and very much more difficult than it was in the pre-World War I era, because that mass layer of that militant minority, the true workers' vanguard, was disorganized by Stalinism, decimated by social democracy, fascism, etc. in the 30s and 40s and 50s. But for successful struggles today and for the radical transformation, the overthrow of capitalism, that sort of organization of the militant minority is absolutely necessary. And for me, the Russian Revolution remains I hate to use the term model, but this is what a working class revolution is going to look like. It's going to involve massive strikes and massive attempts by workers not only to defend themselves against capitalism, but to actually take control of the world, take control of society through their own democratic institutions.
Thank you very much.
No problem.